Everything on, the mic's on and everything. It's 9:04 a.m. It's Wednesday, August 13, 2025. This is the regular meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board. I will call the meeting to order. Raymond, I'll ask you to do roll call.
Ms. Wilson, Robert Studer, Director of Financial Record. I'm handling today's meeting, so I'll do a roll call. Mr. Palacios?
Thank you.
Here. Ms. Ortega?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Masters?
Here.
Mr. McElroy?
Here.
Ms. Perez joining us via
Here.
Teams.
Yeah, good. So we have all members present. Do we have any public comments?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Sorry. I'll look that way. Then moving on to item number 2, adoption of the minutes for the RMA board meeting of July 18th, 2025. Has everyone received and reviewed them? If there are no comments or changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 3, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the following actions as recommended by the Finance Committee. A, adoption of the RMA budget for fiscal year 2026. B, adoption of an amended RMA investment policy, including designation of investment officers and authorization of training as appropriate. C, adoption of an amended RMA grant policy. D, execution of an engagement letter with Gibson Riddick Patterson LLC for the fiscal year 2025 annual audit. And E, execution of engagement letters with Pena Briones McDaniel and Company for the provision of a general certified public accounting services and vehicle registration fee program audit services. I'll turn that over to you, Robert, and Leah of the.
Yes, I would like to start by thanking the Finance Committee. We met last Thursday to review all these items, and the committee does recommend board approval. However, as practice, when we have the budget, we do go over that with the full board just to make sure that we spend some time on that. IT, if you could bring up the PowerPoint. Thank you very much. So here is our agenda. We'll talk about some year-to-date actuals and my projections for where we'll end the year. We'll high-level look at the operating budget for next year, going into the detail of the revenue and the appropriations, and then we'll talk about the bike share as well. Oh. So this is our revenue budget for the current year and some where we are through the third quarter, and then my year-end forecast. I would like to point out that this is a very good year for us. It's our second good year in a row. Historically, we have not done as well. Our interest and investment revenue is doing very well. Rates are elevated. They have been for the last 2.5 years. Prior to that, when rates were 0.25% or smaller, we were not doing so hot, and we had a big influx of cash following the completion or the payoff of the Spurs 601 debt. But for many years, we ran at a deficit. That's also attributed to the timing of projects. So we typically are not paid until a project phase is complete. So if you think we bring to you something today for design, if that design takes 2 years, we're not getting paid during that time. So our revenue from project fees is very, very lumpy. When we complete design, we then move to construction. That's another 18 months, and so we would get paid at the end of that. We've had a big shift of projects completing design and moving to construction. So for the next few years, we're going to see some elevated project admin fees, but they really are not cyclical in any way and are very, very lumpy. So I just want to point that out to you all. Bless you. These are our expenditures for the year. Salaries and benefits are projected to finish under budget. That's because we have not filled that third position. We are making some headway on that, and then Raymond and I continue having discussions on that, and you'll see an update on that when we get to 26's budget. The other thing I'd like to point out is in December, the board, as part of the result of the strategic plan, authorized the staff to increase the budget for outreach, and so we're in the middle of a website redesign. Not all of that is going to get covered in the current fiscal year. We expect one more payment next fiscal year, and so I do have that in next year's budget, but that's why that is larger than normal. And then outside counsel is behind on legal services, so I don't have a good projection on that, but it is will finish below budget. And I guess I'll take a moment here to also point out the kind of the strategy the RMA takes with the budget. We're not trying to hit everything right on. It's not worth it for us to micromanage the budget. And so the staff and the board for years have been in agreement that the board gives us some leeway and we continually finish under budget and we only spend what we need, but we don't want to have it so small that I'm doing a lot of budget amendments and bringing those back to you, which is a requirement. Instead, you give us plenty of cushion and then we continuously finish under budget. But that's the strategy. So it looks like we're well under budget. That is by design. So for the new board members, our fiscal year runs September 1st through August 31st. This is only our operating budget. You all are approving budgets when you approve individual projects. They have a budget sheet and you're approving those as we go. And then this is for, it does include administrative fees and salary reimbursements from those projects, however. So the revenue the RMA receives from those projects, not the total revenue of those projects. And then the major variances are the full budget for the third position. Last year and the year prior, we only budgeted partial. Increase for annual audit. So we will talk about this on the next item, or a couple items later, but the audit firm came back to us with a higher price. We negotiated with them to get them back down a little bit, but I'll be taking some of the initial work, but we've agreed on a small increase there. We also increased the reimbursement to the city of El Paso. So a few years ago, we started paying for additional services, and we just extended that agreement for 10 years, and so we've increased the cap. We will finish underneath that almost assuredly. It's based on the actuals of a position, but it gives us room to grow over the next 10 years. And then every other year, when the legislature is not in session, we lower our legal services, and so we're doing that again. This is a snapshot of the overview of the budget. You'll see the revenue is increasing quite a bit, and we'll talk about that, but that's really the large construction projects that we expect to complete next year. So as a reminder, we are an unfunded agency and we have no taxing authority, so we don't have sales tax or property tax or some kind of locked-in revenue that's going to come to us every single year. So we do have revenue off of our projects. One of those is from the 2013 CMP that led to the issuance of the VRF. Right now, we are collecting almost $35,000 a year for oversight of that VRF program, which is 0.1% of the par amount of the second issuance. The first issuance we're no longer collecting, even though there's money remaining and we're still overseeing that. We're not earning any revenue off of that. We're not getting paid for that oversight. And then project admin fees, typically 3%. Depending on the size of the design and construction of a project. And then we do use a flat fee for right-of-way parcels, as we have added that as a service. It is difficult to forecast what revenues we're going to receive. Projects, as you'll see today, we want to revise that scope, and so what we thought might finish this year now just added 6 months. So it's very difficult to project, and it's very lumpy. And so the 26 budget includes, I would call a reasonable estimate of what we expect to receive from completing projects or phases of projects. Here's the revenue broken out in a little more detail. Highlighted in purple is FY26. You can see we removed salary reimbursements. We've kind of changed our process with TxDOT, and I believe Loop 375 is scheduled to finish, I think, in August. It may have extended out to October, but it keeps extending out. Last year, we only budgeted for a portion of this year, and then the project has continued on. That's a TxDOT project, and we provided design services. And so as they're wrapping that project up, we may get a little there, but not much. And then you can see the project admin fees we've increased there. The third line item is VRF audit reimbursements. The county a few years ago asked the RMA to perform additional audit services on payments going in and out and what's happening with the VRF. It's really just a pass-through. We have $12,000 on the expenses as well, and we pay that to our CPA consultant, and item 3E is to approve that agreement. So expenditures, salaries and benefits is going up. We do budget for contractual increases for both Raymond and I. The budget does not determine that. You all determined Raymond, and he will determine mine based on his evaluation of me, but we budget for the full amount in case we need it. And then we've also increased the budget for the third position to what we consider the full amount. And so that's why there's a large change there, is so that we have the funding to go hire that third position. When we look at our contracts and operating expenditures, there are some large changes I would like to talk about. One, and you can see in the second to last column, is the increase or decrease. So first you have the annual audit I mentioned. Then you have the management agreement with the city that I mentioned. You have media and outreach. One is, a portion of that is that last payment for the website. The other piece is for the additional work that the board has asked through the strategic plan. The next change is for general engineering consultant. So we have had a work authorization with Atkins for many years that allows us to do emergent small projects. And we've used it only occasionally, but it was always $10,000. That's not really enough to provide much support if we do have one of our partners come forward and say, hey, we've got something really quick, can you work on it? So the $50,000 allows us to do a little more, still required to follow purchasing guidelines for the executive director to execute something, and so we are capped at $25,000. The next item is grant support, and this was an idea that came out of the board a few years ago when the IIJA was passed. The plan was for the RMA to support smaller communities as they pursued grants. Directly, it did not lead to anything, but the concept was sound, and we're actually pursuing some projects with the county using that same concept. But with the change in administration, I don't think this is going anywhere, so we're pulling that back out. But this has been a budgeted item with no expenses for the last few years, and so we're taking that out. And then the legal services is decreasing again due to the fact that we will not be in legislative session. And insurance, we have a small increase to make sure we can cover. I'm sure you've seen it in your car insurance and other places that your insurance is increasing, and so we have that as well. That's really what I have for you on the overview of the full budget, but let's talk bike share for a second. It's analogous to transit. El Paso Electric, and then that it requires support. In fact, the board transferred some funds over from itself to bike share to keep it going a few years ago. El Paso Electric renewed its sponsorship for the 5th year this past spring, and so that is a very nice thing, and we have their branding across all of our bikes. A large portion of our costs are fixed, including our third-party operator, software fees, and connectivity, so the modems can talk back and connect with people that use the app. We do have $25,000 in the budget in case we are awarded grant funds through the MPO. We did win those the last 2 years and purchased 73 bikes, e-bikes, and added those to our fleet, and we're seeing an increase in ridership this summer, we think, due to that. So here's the changes in the budget. Again, 26 is in purple. Sponsorships are increasing because we have an agreement with the county for the Escarate station, which is now our 3rd best performing station. That's actually a great success story, but they're providing $6,000 to us for operating that station. And then we don't need to use as much funds on hand because we've got the sponsorship, and our costs are decreasing as well. So we switched to app only on January 1st, and in doing so, we don't have to pay fees for credit card terminals to process payments at the kiosks. All right, so the budget resolution adopts both the operating budget and the Sun Cycle budget and authorizes staff to make budget transfers up to $10,000, provided that I provide a report to you all. We've only done that once in the history since we've added that. And we like to not have to worry about doing that, and so we do have some cushion built into our line items. And while I do have requested action here, we can take all 5 items together if you'd rather, and then I'll just go through each of the other 4 items, and that'll just require 1 vote at the end if that's okay. But I'm happy to take any questions on the budget. Yes, ma'am. No, good.
My question is on the grant item. I know that, I guess, the presumption is that with a new administration, there'd be less grant funding available, but we don't know how things are going to shake out entirely, and I think it removes the opportunity to maybe partner with the city when competitive grants do come up. You're sure you don't want to leave yourself any leeway to partner with, whether it's city, county, anybody, to work on those kind of, because I don't think the DOT grants and those things will go away for the next 3.5 years entirely.
No, this was for us to really help the smaller communities that may not have the staff. Right. Yeah, we could.
I agree. I think it's short-sighted to eliminate funding, even if we don't use it.
Okay.
Now, I mean, if it's in a reserve and we can come back and amend the budget to authorize if opportunities present themselves, but to me, that's an extra step that you put $50,000 in, even if we don't spend it. Yeah. And part of that was that when we put that up was that most of these smaller communities don't have like a local match. where they don't have technical resources, and so we basically would enter into an advanced agreement where we would upfront that money and work for them with the understanding that we would manage the money and the projects through like an interlocal, like we're doing for most of these things now. So I do agree that that's probably not a bad idea.
I'm okay if you don't spend it, but don't limit yourself from the start.
If I could chime in, so I think the switch that we made was getting rid of the grant-specific line item, and we made it more general, so we have that general engineering consultant amount that
It's
could
very
provide grant
small.
support. Right, and that's where I was going. So if you want to increase that amount, that'll provide the exact
I think-
same role.
Leah, what is your,
Well, we talked about this during the finance committee, and, you know, we kind of agreed that we were going to eliminate it. Monica and I were both there, but, I mean, if you all feel like we need to put it back in as a line item,
I mean, the only alternative is if you adopt the budget this way and an opportunity presents itself, then you need to come back and request funding from the reserve to do it. And to me, that's just a delay and an extra step in a process that's not necessary.
Even though when you're writing these grants, you're in a crunch for timing.
Yeah. I would recommend that maybe we add 50,000 back into that category, just so you've got it there for those purposes.
Okay.
The other, I have a, no, does anyone else have questions? Because I've got a couple.
You can go ahead.
So on the position, we've had this position in the budget now, I think this is like going on the third year to add a staff person. And I know initially it was we were going to go one way, then last year it was more sort of project management way. Like, what is the deal? I mean, it just seems to me like we have a lot of work. We have a lot of work, and there's functions, I think, that could be addressed by an additional person that would allow the two of you to redirect some of your energies. I still feel like our communications and community awareness is really limited. And I know we have like a media budget in here that's also very small. And so depending on the talent, I mean, you could have somebody doing more with sort of, I mean, we're doing a lot of work in the community. We're doing a lot of work in smaller communities. I still think most people don't know about it. We don't really have a consistent communication strategy where you're doing a monthly update to key stakeholders or a quarterly update, or if you are, I'm not getting them. At least I'm not seeing them. And so I think part of it is that I'd really like to have a discussion about that over the first quarter, not right today, about what the game plan is for that investment and how to best use it to address some of the things that we've talked about.
So I'll address that. This is my item. There's actually been 3 different versions of that position. So originally, the board was interested in providing or asking us to bring on almost like an administrative position. So that was the original version. We went through different iterations with the board, ultimately pulled that back, and then began pursuing the idea of an actual professional engineer, so a director of engineering. So we went down that path. I think Robert and I specifically have kind of reconsidered that and thought, I think that's probably overkill for the position that we're looking for, because we're not going to be signing and sealing and that sort of thing. I've been speaking with various local PEs, spoken with one of their industry groups, and gotten some input and some feedback on that. So where we are now is not a PE, looking more for a project manager and that sort of thing. So I've got a draft job scope for that. We've got some draft salary numbers and that sort of thing. So we're ready. Also spoken to our attorney on how to procure this individual as well. So we've got a couple of different options there. So we're on the verge of releasing that pretty soon. But then to touch on the marketing and outreach component. So as you know, when we went through strategic planning last time, you all wanted to see that beefed up. You identified certain things that the board wanted to implement. And we were going down that path with Barracuda. Of course, Barracuda has filed for bankruptcy. We now I've got a fee and scope from a different group that's going to provide those services to us. So we'll be back on track probably within the next couple of weeks when we have a signed agreement. So you'll see that. You'll see the quarterly newsletters back up and running, because those were handled by Barracuda. You'll see a communications plan that the strategic planning asked for. You'll see that as well. And so you'll see, in fact, I'll share the scope with you once it's final, so you can see the outreach activities that we're planning to do.
Okay. So on the project management, I mean, I guess I'm a little confused. Don't those 2 companies do that for us?
They
Or-
do, but the intention was to bring somebody in-house so that they, very similar to the way that we structured Robert's position. So the idea was, at that time, we were relying very heavily on an outside CPA firm. We brought Robert in, he brought in a lot of those activities in-house. And so that's
All right.
the same concept.
Okay, so once you have this finalized, would you share that with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'd like for others to have some input too.
Yes, ma'am.
They may have some ideas or like contacts as
Sure.
well.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Actually, one of my questions dealt with that, with the type of employee that they were looking at hiring and where the status was as to the actual possibility of hiring somebody because it commences in September. So you've covered that. And the other one dealt with the grants, whether we still needed some funding for it. But the last one was with regard to legal services. It went down for this new fiscal year. Why do you all expect that that should be decreased?
So we have historically increased during legislative sessions and then decreased it in the years when there's not legislative session because we tend to not use the services as much. We could leave it where it is and have plenty of room, but it's just a acknowledging that we don't tend to see as many invoices and work from the attorneys in Austin when they're not in session.
The current services that are being provided,
So
included, all included
No,
legislative type of
we charge
fees
to the
for
projects.
legal?
Yes, so we charge any project. We have legal services we to charge to the projects, but just for the RMA, our law firm in Austin kind of works
Okay.
as a lobbyist as well and is very busy during the session and keeping us up to date on items. And in fact, they will probably be here next month or could be to give us some ethics training, but
Sorry, and also a legislative update in terms of what happened during the session. So they do that for us. So that's why you see a spike every 2 years during session for those services, and then it drops back down.
Okay. So it's not a lobbyist that's being hired?
no.
It's a lawyer that you have?
It's an attorney that works
doing-
for several of the RMAs.
It's actually Brian O'Reilly. You may remember him from, he worked with your former staff on a number of bills that we were trying to get through as well.
Okay. Okay.
Just monitor stuff that impacts the Army's authority and other issues.
Okay, those were my questions, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
As amended.
As amended.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, then we can go through the other items and adopt that as a group because they're all sort of related. Is that okay?
I want to clarify, so you want 50,000 added to the grant line item,
No, we want to add it
to
to
the
general-
GC? Okay,
The one where
sure.
dealing with that general thing. So-
Ms. Wilson, would you turn on your
So
microphone?
if there's money available in the event you need it.
Turn your,
Yeah, just the GC, the one
Sure.
category Raymond mentioned.
perfect.
So with that amendment, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and second to approve the budget as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, thank you. Then Robert, go through items B through E, and then we'll entertain motions to address those as a group.
Yes, ma'am. Each August, we adopt a revised investment policy. We do it in August in case there's any changes from the legislative session, and so we can incorporate those leading up to the new fiscal year. There weren't any that we need to incorporate. However, we do have changes. We reviewed those in detail with the Finance Committee. The big change is the city is now pointing to our investment policy and using it, whereas they used to say they were using theirs. And so that's the major change there, but we do recommend approval of that. And that also was changed in the management agreement that we signed the 10-year extension to. So we're just matching with the 10-year agreement. The grant policy, every year after the audit or during the auditor will provide me with some comments. Hey, we think your policy could be a little bit better if you were a little bit more detailed in this section, primarily process and responsibility. So we've added some changes that indicate whether Raymond or I is responsible for a certain thing and what our exact process is. That's the bulk of the changes on the grant policy. 3D is an engagement letter with our auditor, Gibson Ruddock Patterson. That is the $5,500 increase that we talked about during the budget process. 3E are 2 engagement letters with Peña Briones McDaniel, who serves as our outside CPA consultant. One is for services, so if I have a question or we need some support during the audit, we can lean on her. And the second one is for that VRF audit that I mentioned that we get reimbursed from the county on. And as mentioned, Finance Committee reviewed and recommends approval. Staff recommends approval as well.
Leah, do you have any input or comments?
No.
Okay, so for the benefit of the newer members, typically, most of these items do get vetted extensively during the Finance Committee. So generally, when they come to the board, we don't spend a whole lot of time on them unless you have questions. And if the committee recommends approval, then I just typically will put the motion on the floor. So are there any questions or comments about any of the remaining items? Then if not, would you like to make the motion to
I'll
approve?
make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion and a second to approve items 3B, D, C, D, and E. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4 is discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following amendments as they relate to design work for the El Paso County Transit Facility Project. A, work authorization number 2 with HDR Engineering, Inc. B, work authorization number 58 with Atkins Realis USA, Inc.
So you've seen this project numerous times. It first came to the board in December of 2023. We are acquiring right-of-way for the county. We also are doing a study, and then we're also doing design. The county now wishes to move that design forward to the 30% phase. That's really all there's budget for in the current ILA. The ILA does not require an amendment, but we are increasing work authorization number 2 with HDR Engineering, Inc. for just under $700,000. And then item 4B is increasing the work authorization number 58 with Atkins Realis USA for $87,000. And we do have someone here from the county transit in case you have any questions of them, but they are in support of this, and staff does recommend approval.
Any comments or questions?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to take the following actions as they relate to the Fabens Airport Fuel Farm and AWS project. A, execute amendment to the interlocal agreement with El Paso County. And B, authorize the issuance of a procurement for construction of a fuel farm.
Okay, so this is among the many improvements we're working with the county on at the airport. We originally designed both a fuel farm and the AWAS system, the Automated Weather Observing System. The AWAS we let a while back, and it's close to construction, but the fuel farm, we needed the county to help identify additional funding to be able to support that one moving to construction. We actually received board approval in May of 2024 to let this project, but because we've had significant turnover of the board, we thought we'd come back and ask for that approval again. The interlocal with the county is increasing by $1,160,523, and that brings the total project budget to just under $2.4 million. And then the second item is to authorize the executive director to let the project, and we do recommend approval of both.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion then.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Before we go to item 6, is Nicholas here from Kemp Smith?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
hi, sorry, we hadn't met in person, so I wanted to make sure. When did you say you needed to leave, 11:15? Okay, then I'll monitor the time so that we break to get to deal with your stuff in a timely manner. Thank you. I think these next few you will move through pretty quickly, but if we don't, then I'll recess. So moving on to item number 6, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following amendments for the acquisition of property and related activities as they relate to the Darrington Roadway Improvement Project. A, interlocal agreement with El Paso County, and B, work authorization number 24.1 with Atkins Realis USA.
So this is a VRF-funded project, the design completed by VRF funding. We previously acquired one parcel or paid funding, and the county acquired the parcel. We were just the funding mechanism on this project. They're asking us to provide right-of-way acquisition services, but I believe they will be the ones purchasing the parcel. They could come back to us and ask us to do the acquisition. Right now, we're just providing the services, the negotiation, appraisal, that sort of thing. But the interlocal adds VRF funding, or allocates VRF funding for this, and then we have a work authorization with Atkins for them to do the acquisition services. We do recommend approval. And we do have someone from the county here in case you have any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Then I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
So I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of an amendment to an interlocal agreement with the City of El Paso for the acquisition of certain properties necessary for the Montwood Drive Extension Project.
So this amendment with the city is really doing two things. As some project history, we partner with the county to design the project. That design is complete. We handed over those plans to the city. This is one of their 2022 bond-funded projects. The city asked us to acquire right-of-way. We've actually acquired, I think, we'll acquire our 5th parcel tomorrow. But the original interlocal had a termination date of September 12th, and so we are adding an additional 12 months to that. At the same time, the city may be interested in using the RMA for some eminent domain. It's not 100% yet, but if so, this gives us the flexibility to acquire up to 3 parcels via eminent domain. And so those are the two changes that are happening here, and we do recommend approval.
Any discussion?
I should add, it's a not-to-exceed amount if we do go with eminent domain of $108,000 for the cost of those services.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 8, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following instruments for the provision of geotechnical services for the Town of Horizon City's Darrington Roadway Project. A, the interlocal agreement with the Town of Horizon City, Texas. And B, work authorization number 56-1 with Atkins Realis, Inc., USA Inc.
So we originally partnered with Verizon on this project to acquire right-of-way. Then they are working with Texas on the design, and the project is now in construction. As they are moving through construction, they've run into some issues with a pond area that has hit sugar sand, and some geotechnical work is required. So the RMA is able to step up very quickly, and through one of our GECs, provide some geotechnical work that will minimize project delays instead of TxDOT having to go out and do this work. So the first item is interlocal with Town of Horizon City to give us access to up to $30,000, and then a work authorization with Atkins to do the geotechnical work. We do recommend approval. I do not believe we have anyone here from Horizon, but they have reviewed, and I believe their board approved this agreement last night.
Great. If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
So I have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 9, presentation, discussion, and action on a board resolution establishing scoring criteria and authorizing the issuance of procurement for selection of one or more professional engineering firms for indefinite deliverable contracts. Is this for the rotational design stuff?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
IT, could you bring up the PowerPoint and just some background? We last did we did one in 2019, we did one in 2022. In 2019, we had a sample project, and Mr. Tejas did some outreach with firms to find out their thoughts on the procurements, and so we are adding back the sample project. And so if you looked at your backup originally on Monday or Tuesday, you may not have seen the scoring. The scoring has adjusted, and that's to include that sample project. So in case you looked at your backup previously, that's the change. So there's our agenda. It is, as Ms. Wilson said, to have the rotation. These are some of the services that we will request that firms be able to provide to us. There is a laundry list that will be included in the procurement, but it helps us use these firms on an as-needed basis. This is the scoring that was revised, as I mentioned, in your backup. The 35% will be allocated to team organization staffing and their approach to the DBE utilization. Their past project experience is worth 25%, and then 40% will be for that sample project and approach, and then we think that gives us a good insight into how they work. We will ask an external evaluation committee to review those responses and make recommendations to the board. We hopefully will include someone from the City of El Paso, the County of El Paso, and TxDOT. I'm not sure the MPO has engineers, but we work.
They don't?
Yeah, so we want engineers to review this.
Yeah, we normally rely on implementing agencies as opposed to the planning agency.
Okay, this is a proposed timeline, so we're getting your approval today. We'll issue the procurement in September and hopefully get those responses back. The committee will meet in October, November. We'll bring back a recommendation to you all on which and how many firms we'd like to select, and then December and January we'll negotiate and hopefully execute those agreements. So this is the requested board action, and adopt or approve a resolution to adopt the proposed selection criteria and scoring presented, and to authorize the executive director to issue a procurement for the selection of one or more indefinite deliverable contracts for professional engineering services. We recommend approval.
Can you go back to the scoring for a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, like, the sample project approach is a pretty high percentage of the score. And there may be a reason for that, but it just seems kind of high. So I have a question about that. But the past project experience, is that with the RMA or just generally project experience of similar types and activities within the region or something? And I'm asking that because I mean, every time we do this, there are local firms that generally, like, for some reason get cut out, and then they're, of course, unhappy because it's like the big guys tend to come in. And a lot of our projects now are not unnecessarily overly large. I mean, we have big projects, but we also have smaller communities now with projects that are not quite as extensive in terms of scope. And I just want to make sure we have a balance of competitive firms having an opportunity to compete fairly, so that we do have some, I mean, there's a lot of local engineering firms here, and I just want to make sure that everybody gets a fair cut. So I want to make sure that this isn't like unnecessarily like weighted, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. It's something that I had been speaking with several of the engineering firms in town about, and you're exactly right. The last procurement that we did focused, I think, too heavily on larger projects. And as you mentioned, the majority of our projects are I say small, up to 20 million, something like that. So there are a lot of El Paso firms that can provide those services. So part of the retooling of this procurement is directly related to the input that we received from those various firms that are here doing work locally. So there is an El Paso component to it that you'll see in the past project experience. Now, as far as the sample project, that is weighted really heavily because that's where we're going to see their approach, their ideas, their concept. We actually have an El Paso specific project that we'll be utilizing, so they will have to present to us how they would approach that project. And we think we'll get a lot of insight from that, and so that's why that's weighted so heavily.
I had a question. How did you all come up with the percentages with regard to the specific criteria?
So that number comes from discussions. We brought Atkins on board to provide support services. So we've had conversations with them about where the points should come and that sort of thing. So ultimately, it comes from what are we looking for, and that's why you see the 40% so high on the project-specific proposal. Sure.
Yes. Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair, board members, Ed Rufino, GC Atkins Reales. So traditionally, we reviewed back the 2022 procurement and the 2019 procurement. And my staff member who does this on a full-time basis provided updates in regards to the percentages. And that was a discussion that we had with Raymond and Robert. And the sample project, like Raymond mentioned, is basically a local project here as far as a county roadway that local staff or consultants or even the minority firms that are eligible to bid on it's an opportunity for them to provide their experience. And that's the reason why we have a higher score or a higher percentage for the sample project. But traditionally, these are your divisions in regards to the types of tasks for the percentages.
And how many are we going to look at? I mean, what do we have now, 4?
Yes, ma'am. We have 4.
And have they been rotating pretty frequently?
I think we've gone through 3 rotations this round.
I think we did 3
Yeah,
rotations.
so each
Okay.
firm has received 3
So there's been
projects.
enough activity to
Yes.
keep 4, like to at least get 1 project?
If I remember, in 2019, we selected 5, but that's because when the scores came in, there was kind of a, 4 and 5 were very close, and with the last one, there was clearly a top 4, and so that's how we ended up with
Okay.
those.
All right, I just want to make sure that, I mean, at the end of the day, somebody won't make the cut and they won't be happy, but I just want to make sure that because we had this conversation the last time, because I know I got some calls and you got some calls, and we typically as a board, the one thing I like about the RMA is we sort of stay out of it because the process is pretty clean. But still, I just want to make sure we can assure like the marketplace that it's a competitive process. And it's
Yes, ma'am.
not skewed toward like larger firms that tend to have more of a national presence, so.
It's a much more intentional approach this time after soliciting and receiving a bunch of feedback from the local firms. Yes, ma'am.
So if there are no more comments, then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, next is item 10, update discussion and possible action on the Pelicano Drive widening project. I know we have some public updates, and then we have some executive session discussions on that, but we also have another executive discussion that I want to take first when we go after we recess.
Yes, ma'am. So I'll take this. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. And we probably should have started off this meeting by noting that Robert was running this meeting. We do that at least twice a year, cross-training and delegation purposes. So I think he did a good job. Well done. So this item I'll be brief on in terms of the public component. As you know, last month we asked you for approval to execute various agreements, including the takeover agreement with the surety, the interlocal agreement with the county, work authorizations with CEA, who provides the design services, and then also with Atkins, who would provide oversight. Since last month, we've now received the takeover agreement. We have that in hand now. So that's executed between the RMA and the surety company, and that allows them to commence construction activities on phase 1. Timing-wise, now that that has been executed, they have 10 calendar days to provide all of the insurance requirements that we have in our construction contracts. They have 10 days to do that. If they provide it in 7 days, then I have 5 days to issue a notice to proceed. Once that notice to proceed is issued, they have 365 calendar days, or roughly 261 business days, work days, to complete construction of phase 1. So we're right on the verge of beginning phase 1. I'm very excited to share that with you. So that's really all I have from the public side. I know that there are some questions, and we have our attorneys on standby to take this into executive session. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. The county interlocal agreement, which provides the gap funding that we've talked about, that has been executed as well. So the only items that have not been executed are the work authorizations for CEA and Atkins, which will be signed here after this meeting. So
Everything's moving forward. So everything's executed to move forward with the completion of phase 1, and then after today, starting design on phase 2 and price estimates for the balance of the work.
that's right. So phase 2 is under design right now.
Okay, it
And
is under
that's,
design.
I think we're supposed to receive those plans in November, December of this year. And then,
that will give us our price, like what the real cost is to finish, and then that's what we use as to negotiate with the surety for the balance, right?
that's exactly right. Yes, ma'am.
And that's where the gap funding is, at least right now.
Well, so the gap funding is to close the gap between the original JAR pricing and the Hawk pricing for phase 1.
Okay, for phase 1.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And that $6 million contribution from the county will be part of the negotiated settlement with
the surety, okay.
for phase 2. So those negotiations should start in early 2026.
Okay. And then just for the board, we've started like regular meetings with the county officials for communications purposes. I think we're having our third one today. I went to the first one, we went and met with 2 of the commissioners and staff just to talk about ways to like keep them abreast and communicate and coordinate and expectations with the gap funding, et cetera. So those are going well. And so the agreement is after every RMA meeting, we would just have kind of a Zoom meeting with their stakeholders so everybody knows where we're at. And I know that they want to do some public communication. So after today, I do think we need to really get out there that, you know, the project's relaunching. Here are the steps. Here's sort of the timeline so that publicly people know something's actually going to start happening.
Yes, ma'am. I've already started speaking with their outreach folks,
Okay.
sharing our logo and that sort of thing. And I briefed them on what we were preparing for and the 10-day, 5-day.
Yeah, I think we should just lay all that out. Here's the timetable, like the steps in the process so people understand what's going on.
Yes, ma'am.
I understand the need to do the agreement with the county. Don't have any questions about why we're doing it, but I do have some questions about our approach with the surety that are probably best for executive session. Okay.
If there's no other discussion on this item publicly, then I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to go into executive session. We have the contract renewal and annual review that we need to do first with Nicholas, and then we'll go to that item.
If I could also ask you to read item 11 into the record and then the executive session script.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Please.
Sure. So then moving on to item 11, discussion and action on board resolutions for the following items as they relate to the employment of the executive director in order to, 1, approve the annual performance evaluation and authorize the RMA chair to communicate the results of the evaluation to the city of El Paso and take other actions as necessary, and B, approve recommended terms of renewal of the employment agreement between the RMA's executive director and the city of El Paso, and authorize the RMA to continue to reimburse the city of El Paso for the employment of the executive director. And with that, the time is 9:50 a.m. on August 13th, 2025, and the RMA Board of Directors will now retire into executive session for items 10 and 11 of the agenda pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of consultation with an attorney, and Section 551.074 for purposes of deliberating personnel matters. We will reconvene the open meeting upon conclusion of the executive session. It's now 10:46 a.m. on August 13th, 2025, and the Board of Directors of the RMA is reconvening its open meeting after deliberation and executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.074. The board consulted with its attorney and discussed personnel matters but took no action in executive session. And so we're now in open session. We're on item 11. 11A is to approve the annual performance evaluation. And based on board discussion, the board moves to approve the annual evaluation and award the executive director an increase of 4.5% to his base pay effective September 1, 2025, and that he be paid a one-time lump sum of $7,500 for successful performance during the past previous year. In addition, the board requested information for the future on deferred compensation, employer contribution, and the cap for that, and whether or not we're currently at the cap. If not, then what that would be, so that we have that as an item for consideration in 2026. So I will make a motion to approve this resolution.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Raymond. Thank you for a great year. The second item, B, is to approve the terms of renewal for the employment agreement for the executive director. And this agreement would be for 3 years with a new base salary of $283,090.21. Same terms and conditions. The board also recommended leaving the vehicle allowance at its current amount of $500 per month. And with that, I will make a motion to approve the renewal as read into the record. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Is there any other business?
No, ma'am, that's it. Thank you
Then
all.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
We have a motion and second. It is 10:50 a.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, Monica.
Thank
for,
you.